the independent chair, hearing commissioner, being appointed by the council. On my left, I've got Steve McNally, who's a councillor and also a accredited commissioner. And then I've got Alan Watson, who's an independent hearing commissioner. So we've been appointed by the council to consider the submissions in the Section 42A reports and in due course make a recommendation to the council on the evidence that we hear. Can you hear me, you two ladies?
I think it's better with the headphones, so we're doing the headphones.
Helen, can you hear me?
Good morning, I can, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we've got the officers here. I'll get them to introduce themselves in a moment. Basically, the procedure is you'll provide your evidence. We might ask the officers if they've got any points of clarifications. We might ask you some questions. We may not, because your evidence is clear or your report is clear. The 4 topics we're dealing with are the renewable energy, infrastructure, transport and designations. And that's basically it. Housekeeping matters.
Shall I open with a karakia
Oh,
and
yes.
then we'll move to housekeeping?
Yeah.
Cool, I'll just quickly open with a karakia. Tū taua mai I rongo, tū taua mai I raro, tū taua mai I roto, tū taua mai I waho, kia tau ai te mauri tū, te mauri ora ki te katoa, haumie, huie, tākie. Yes, and just housekeeping for those in the room, bathrooms are left and down the hall a bit. In the event of a fire, follow the exit signs and gather out the front over here and just make sure you've got your cell phones off.
So what I'll do, I'll get the staff just to introduce themselves briefly and to advise those submitters who are online what topic they're dealing with. So I'll start with AK first. You can explain your
Good morning, I'm AK. I am the hearings administrator in the district plan team.
Kia ora koutou, James Witham, team leader, district plan.
Morning, I'm Lynette Morgan and I am the Section 42 report writer for designations.
Kia ora koutou, I'm Kevin Baxter and I'm the report writer for renewable energy.
Kia ora koutou, my name is Jerome Wyatt. I'm the reporting officer for the infrastructure chapter.
Morning, Tam Lister, manager of the district plan team and also our growth planning functions.
Morena, Matt Collins, consultant transport planner, assisting Ms. Pearson with the transport chapter.
Kia ora koutou, sorry.
Keep going.
Kia ora koutou, I'm Melissa Pearson. I'm the Section 42A officer for the transport topic.
Thank you. Right, we've got nothing else, have we? No. So what we'll do, we'll start with it's Te Whatu Aurora, Health New Zealand. We've got Helen Hamilton and Monique Fowler, is it?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Chair, which order would you like us to address you in?
Whatever you want to do, it's your evidence. So yeah, I'm quite happy for whatever you want. It's Helen who's provided the evidence, isn't it? And then that. So Helen probably should go. That's what we've gotten right.
Thanks, Chair. Okay. All right. Well, I'll commence and then I'll hand over to Ms. Fowler in terms of the corporate evidence. So, look, tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you for scheduling us this morning and look, really pleased to speak with you this morning on topic 11. As you've introduced, Chair, I've provided planning evidence on this matter and Ms. Fowler has provided corporate evidence. So look, I'll take it as read and just simply say as sort of an overarching opening comment, look, my planning evidence is brief on this matter. It's focused on 3 key areas: parking, general matters, and that matter in relation to the definition of bed, in relation to hospital and healthcare, and trip generation. Chair and panel members, you will have seen that I've presented my evidence in 2 parts. First, where there are matters of alignment or agreement between the officer's recommendations and the relief sought one way or other through our submissions. My proposal, Chair, is to just simply set those matters of agreement aside, unless there are perhaps questions at the end, and really just focus on the material matter of contention, which is trip generation, specifically the ITA requirement, where there is an exceedance of the thresholds in relation to the hospital's owned land. Chair, is that acceptable? I'll just simply focus on that matter of contention.
Yes, by all means, yeah. There's no point in giving evidence if you agree with the officers.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. Thank you for that. Look, I'll keep it brief. You will have seen that my planning evidence relies heavily on Ms. Fowler's corporate evidence, and obviously she'll speak to that. And those areas are obviously beyond my planning area. I guess I'll keep my comments brief. I just wanted to acknowledge at the outset that, look, in preparing my evidence for you today, panel, I've read the officer's report, the technical analysis, the background reports, obviously that support these proposed provisions. I've also just wanted to let you know, because I've kept my evidence brief, that I've reviewed the broader strategic transport context here, in particular the FNDC integrated transport strategy and plan, and having, it may have come through from my CV at the back of my evidence, but having recently joined Health New Zealand approximately a couple of months ago from an executive role in local government, I, just for context, am certainly well aware of the funding pressures in relation to local roads and the broader, NLTP funding environment and those challenges that present themselves for local government. And I guess for opening context, really, I just really wanted to acknowledge that, the roading network, both for the district and the region are regionally and nationally significant assets, critical to the economic, social, health and wellbeing success of the community and region. And the reason I wanted to open with that point to you, Chair and panel, was to just make it abundantly clear that the relief sought by Health New Zealand and the planning position set out in my evidence is not in any way seeking to challenge the critical nature of the roading network and what that means to the far north. And certainly Health New Zealand is, and Ms. Fowler may speak to this point, is certainly well aware of the criticality of all roading networks to the way our hospital infrastructure operates. And so I guess turning now to the specific planning points in my evidence, really the relief sought by Health New Zealand in relation to this matter is not in any way intended to undermine the need to address the effective management of the roading network, both in capacity, its function, safety, and so on. And as you will have read in my evidence relies heavily on Ms. Fowler's corporate evidence or corporate statement, and in particular, and the reason I have come to form a differing opinion from the reporting officer on this matter. For context, this is an issue that we are looking at not only in the far north and elsewhere, obviously in the Northland region, but like all issues that Health New Zealand deals with in some 70 plus councils around the nation. And so my view is that it is appropriate to firstly look at, in managing the effects on the roading network, firstly, are we dealing with the source of the effects at hand? And having read Ms. Fowler's corporate statement, I found, and they're not obviously areas of my expertise, but I found her statement compelling in relation to making an argument around the responsive and the reactive character of the hospital and healthcare services, as opposed to, demand generating activity like destination retail and so on. And also just in relation to the strategic drivers of the demand for healthcare services that are not directly managed or controlled by Health New Zealand as an entity, or also just the hospital and healthcare activities undertaken in hospital's own land. And so from a planning perspective, I've looked at this from a first principles perspective. So acknowledging the significance of the roading network to both the district and the region, yes, and acknowledging that it must be managed appropriately, and finding generally agreement with the planning officer's report in relation to these matters, but in relation to a threshold and an exceedance of a threshold of activities operating within the hospital zone, that is fundamentally where my planning view is different, in that we're dealing with demand for health services that exist whether Bay of Islands Hospital is upgraded or not. If our activities do not change on the site, those latent demand for health services that are well set out in Ms. Fowler's statement, they exist regardless. And so from a planning perspective, I've come to the conclusion that the exemption sought by Health New Zealand is appropriate for those reasons. So look, I won't labour the point any further, and I just simply make the point that the critical reason for my planning opinion rests heavily on the arguments made by Ms. Fowler in her statement. So perhaps Chair and panel, I'm happy to answer specific planning questions at this point. Otherwise, perhaps I suggest it might be appropriate to hand to Ms. Fowler to speak through her statement.
I'll see if my colleagues have got any questions for you first.
Yeah, I think the basic question that comes out of it, and just picking up on what you were just saying, I mean, why is the hospital any different than a retail function? I mean, there's a need for retailing. We have retailing. Retailers are out irrespective of whether there's car parks or not. What is it that differentiates hospital services and healthcare services from those other activities?
Yeah, and look, I'm mindful to stay in my lane in terms of planning evidence only, and I think there are matters in Ms. Fowler's statement, I think, that address that. But certainly from a pure planning perspective, one is around need of existence and when one isn't. And I think Ms. Fowler's statement sets out really clearly the statutory context for why, and I know to some extent I'm sort of stating the obvious, but why the hospital system and the healthcare system exists. And sorry, I don't have the para reference in front of me, but Ms. Fowler makes the point in her statement that no one attends the hospital unless they really have to, as opposed to there is a choice if one is thinking about something in destination retail, separating that from perhaps necessities like food, but destination retail as opposed to a hospital activity. One is a choice and one is a need. And it's really on that basis, and I think Ms. Fowler makes compelling points, and that is how I've ultimately formed a differing opinion from the reporting planner.
So from a planning point of view, are there other activities that could mount a similar argument?
There possibly could be. Look, I will acknowledge that I have not sat down to think through all of those different cases. Look, I certainly, in terms of the work that we're doing in terms of social infrastructure, certainly I think our colleagues in the education space may form those views, but look, I'm mindful that I firstly have not done the analysis for other activities. Simply, I've looked at this point in relation to health. I have looked at this enough in terms of contextualising and being able to form this planning opinion, thinking about education to some extent, but I'm mindful that I certainly don't want to represent to the panel that I've examined a whole raft of other activity. I have not, because on its face, I think really it's something in that sort of social infrastructure space around education and health where I think there is a differentiator in terms of those special characteristics around demand versus need.
Thanks. Yeah, I acknowledge there's a case for what you're saying. That's fine. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
I only had one clarification, really. You said exemption sought is relevant. What exemption in particular?
Sorry, the in terms of the relief sought, that was the question. Yeah, so the fundamental position of Health New Zealand is that it because of those special characteristics that we've just been speaking about, that an ITA is not a requirement that should be necessary. So whether arguably a threshold set in the district plan would have no purpose if there was no trigger that then related to an ITA assessment. Fundamentally, the planning position that I'm arguing in my evidence, which supports the relief sought, is that public hospital and health activities are exempted from a threshold where there is an exceedance, after which an ITA would be required.
Thank you.
Thank
Do you
you.
want to add on to anything to that, Ms Fowler, while we're dealing with that subject?
Just in terms of from a health perspective, you know, I come from the private sector, and interestingly enough, you talk about comparing it to retail. I was one of 4 that established Kiwi Income Property Trust management company of their assets, and you'll probably know them. They own Sylvia Park and others in Auckland, so they own shopping centres. I know retail as well. So, you know, we used to have a saying in retail, build it and they will come. We don't have the same saying in health. You know, we don't build a hospital and cross our fingers and hope people will come to it. We build healthcare facilities in response to community demand. The social determinants of health are not ones that we actually drive. They are community outcomes through poor housing, poor lifestyle choices, poverty, etc., etc. And so when health builds a health facility or acquires additional health facilities, it's in response to health demand. Whether that health demand, whether we cater for that demand closer to communities or further away, the demand on the traffic network will be there, whether it's going in one direction or another. Ideally, I would have thought that, albeit that roads are important, that healthy populations and community are more important. So it's a series of priorities. If you don't have healthy populations and communities, then there's no point in having roads, because they can't go to work, or they can't go to school, or they can't be active contributing members of society. So every dollar that we spend in health that isn't to deliver core health outcomes is a dollar that can't be spent on providing health services. So in our view, it's really a prioritisation and a view that we don't generate the demand for our health services, whereas retail does, and other private sector organisations that, whether it's service stations or whatever, they all want people to come to them, and they sit in a location to get people to come to them, and they want to be where people are. We want to be where the need is, and there's a lot of work happening around making sure that we are actually providing care closer to people's homes and closer to communities. And if every time we want to add on or develop health facilities that and we have to spend on things that are irrelevant to the provision of health services, as a dollar away. And I just don't believe that we're not a traffic demand generator. We are the result. We're the cliff we're the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff, saying there is demand for health services in this community, and as a public sector organisation, we have to respond to that. So it's very much a different way of thinking about perhaps the planning rules and what would generally have been normal, I guess, or I'm not quite sure how you want to phrase that, but I liken it a little bit, and I've said this to Helen as well, I liken it a little bit to sort of bulk and location requirements or impermeable surface requirements. Health land is very precious and it's very expensive. And, if we have to comply with the same rules as Mr. Industrial down the road, when it comes to impermeable surface, which means we can't use our health land efficiently, it's a cost to health. So there are there are things that need to be considered given the extraordinarily expensive cost of delivering healthcare to actually make it more efficient and more effective, and also for recognition that our job isn't to respond to a traffic assessment or integration. It's our job is to respond to communities' demands for health services.
No, I don't have any questions. I thought the evidence, both statements were pretty well put together. Thanks.
I've just got a question. We're talking about 3 sites here, aren't we? Is that correct? There's only 3 hospital zone sites. Yeah, is that correct?
There are 3 hospital sites, and one Rawarenga Hospital is trust operated as opposed to Health New Zealand operated. But yes, three sites with hospital zoning in the district.
Right, I'll just ask Ms. Pearson. Ms. Pearson, you were the author. Have you got any points of clarification you'd like asked or?
Thank you, Chair. That actually was my point of clarification that you've touched on, which was at some points in the evidence there was sort of hospital and healthcare services were used somewhat interchangeably, and I wasn't sure whether the focus was singularly on the hospital zone having an exemption from Tran P7 or whether it was all healthcare services where local GP clinics, etc., also wanting a similar exemption.
We're just talking about the 3 sites, aren't we? Just to be clear.
Yeah, that was my clarification, just to check.
And just can you, Ms. Hamilton or Ms. Fowler, can you confirm that's all you're asking for?
Yeah, Chair. I'm mindful of scope of submission, so the scope of our submission is constrained to hospital sites.
Okay. Unless you've got anything else you wish to say, otherwise we're quite clear on what you would like, and we just got to consider the evidence. And what will happen in 2 or 3 weeks' time, we'll get a right of reply from the officers, which will be available on the council's website, and you'll be able to see what they've suggested to us, and then we've got to decide what to do. Right? Otherwise, thank you very much for your evidence, and have a good day.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time. Thanks, Pat.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Chair.
And we've got Kiwi Rail. Is Matthew Hatz, is it? Online?
Good morning.
Oh yeah, did I pronounce your surname correctly?
No, but I'm very used to that.
That's all right. So you tell me how I say it.
Pates.
Pates. Thank you very much,
Pates.
Mr. Pates. So we're ready when you are.
Yes, good morning to you all. Dialing in here from Auckland. I'm a senior RMA advisor at Kiwi Rail. We've submitted a statement for you all, just a brief statement. Effectively, we're very comfortable with the where the provisions have landed in general. We just had the one concern really relating to the note around the sightline requirements for level crossings. So there's a note in those provisions around the sightline requirements not applying where there are barrier arms controlling traffic movements. So I've spoken to our sort of infrastructure and safety people about this matter, and effectively their strong preference is to not have that exception, so that the sightlines do apply even when barrier arms are in place. I guess the 2 main reasons for that position: firstly, just as a general rule of thumb, it's good to have visibility through the sightlines, regardless of the controls in place. Just in terms of awareness, just like with roading situations, really, it's just a good safety principle. And the second basis for the position is, just in the event of barrier arms failure, obviously Kiwi Rail will do its very best to avoid signal failures or failures to barrier arm operations. We will do our very best. However, we all know that technology and systems can fail from time to time or not work optimally. So that was another reason, in the case of failure, obviously if you have good sight lines, then that reduces the risk in the event of failure. So they were really the main points. I'm happy to respond to any questions you may have.
I think it's pretty clear what you're looking for. Thanks.
So all you really need is a full stop at the end of the word signs, isn't it? That's what you're asking for.
Yes, effectively, yes. Yes, that's
right. It's fairly clear, very clear. So unless you've got anything you wish to say, Ms. Pearson, have you got any points of clarification you'd like to ask? Is it you, Transport?
It is. Thank you, Chair. Really just to reiterate what I mentioned in my opening statement yesterday, which was that I have discussed this point with Mr. Collins, who was it was his wording I was using for that note. And after reflecting on it further, we are probably at a position where we could also recommend deleting that note, which was one of the sort of pre-thinking things that we've done before the opening of this hearing, if that is comfort to Kiwi Rail, but that is where we are looking to move at this point.
Okay. Thank you very much. If you've got nothing else to add, enjoy the rest of the day. And have you settled into Kiwi Rail now? Because I think you just started the last time you...
Yeah, well, it's been about 10 months now. So yeah, starting to feel a bit more settled in. It's a very interesting place. It's complex and it's large, but interesting challenges. Yeah, no, thank you.
Okay, enjoy yourself. Thank you very much.
Good to see you. Good to see you. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Okay, our next submitter is to be here in person. I've just texted him, but I'll call him.
Okay.
They didn't have any evidence, though, did they? We're normally trying to look at relaxing provision in this case with Kiwi Rail. Put the extra restriction on themselves. Sideline pretty important when you're showing essentially. No evidence from the iron emergency. Is that any person? Oh, yeah, there was a statement from Graham Roberts. Because Roberts is one of the directors at Eckers.
He's about 20 minutes away.
Okay.
Would you like to
have a break? There's nothing else we can do with it. We'll just have a short adjournment where we'll wait for the next person to arrive. So
I will mute the room.